What up, everyone? And today we're going to talk about one of the coolest MCs out there, or two of them technically, Insane Clown Posse, or as I like to say, ICP! I'm just glad and relieved we didn't have to talk about another subject on here that wasn't voted at all in the polls. Yeah, the masked YouTubers. I did not want to talk about Dream or one of my older favorite YouTubers who, yeah, Jesus Christ, what happened to him? I digress. ICP, or commonly referred to as just ICP, are a duo that was formed all the way back in 1989 in Detroit, Michigan, the real burger of America from your nose. ICP is still active and always been known for their iconic white makeup that's similar to Kiss, with black or sometimes red outlines on their face, and consists of the two legendary members, Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope. They started out in a time when there was just a plethora of unknown masked bands. I mean, it was insane. There were so many, like Slipknot, Mushroomhead, but they somehow managed to just stand out in the crowd when it came to that scene. Primarily because of the loyal fan base they garnered throughout the years and captivated, as well as just, their loyal fan base, because their fan base is also known as Juggalos. Many may be baffled by their strange history or by the Juggalos, especially since they are one of the most hated groups out there, on par with Limp Bizkit's reputation. But there's more than meets the eye here. They are underrated, overlooked, and let's get into why they are, as well as one of the most memorable duo acts of all time. ICP's name grew up in prominence around 1993 or 4, pick your poison there, but prior to becoming the silly boys they became, they rapped over a different banner, Inner City Posse. Inner City Posse was legitimately a gang. They started this as a gang initially, but they ended up becoming a rap group out of it. They spit bars behind this name from 1989 to 1991. During this raw era, it was originally a 4-piece, but it soon went down to a 2-piece since two of their members, John Kick Jazz and Kid Villain, decided to call it quits, making it hence into a twosome. Following this significant change, they decided to bravely go on without those two and persevere on. This was the time of their lives that was arguably the bleakest, since even before they became a group, they obviously were gang members initially, and they grew up in one of the most poorest parts of the town, the bowels of the southwest corner of Detroit. Their early life was full to the brim with violence, adolescent gangs, and poverty, which would only influence their sound in the long run. They also were inspired by many big rappers like Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, and NWA, who encompassed Ice Cube and Dr. Dre and more. They also sounded like a goofier Eminem on steroids in the early days, and they ended up even having, I guess, beef with him throughout the years, but it's kind of settled down since. And the first official album, Carnival of Carnage, perfectly laid the foundation of their sound, since it was very goofy and volatile, as well as paving down the eventual lore of the group, or the duo, my ad. The beginning lore basically involves a circus, also known as a dark carnival, coming into town and turning them into malicious-sounding clown rappers. At least that's how I perceive it. The initial reason for the makeup is due to the members thinking of how big of a joke the urban street gangs were. I mean, they're rich-ass kids, making themselves look like gang members. It's just why. I have never understood that, but yeah, they perceived them as clowns since they basically were clowns, and that's where they got the idea of their makeup. That is, like I said, similar to Kiss. And the makeup basically represents a large manifesto against the luxurious lifestyle and fake living. Their duo basically represents that. And the lore also includes a concept of the afterlife in which souls are compiled together, or waiting to be descended or ascended, heaven or hell, which is what they were heavily inspired by in their early years. Their first 6 albums also represent 6 Joker cards separately, each representing a demon in some way, each negative of the lower class. When those cards viewed were kind of the higher up, the wealthy people viewing the negative, having negativity towards the lower class, which is basically a middle finger to the higher class. With all of this information in mind, the first album represents the first Joker card, Carnival of Carnage, representing the higher class's ignorance towards ghettos and the lower class and basically not helping them. And this raw lore also connects to the music perfectly. The overall sound and composition of their first concept album is brutal lyrically and is catchy. It has a gangster sound to it. You feel really immersed in the shitty reality of what Detroit really was like and how plagued with crime it was, how rampant it was. The amount of vulgarity, gunshots, genitals being said can be alarming to some, but yet hilarious to me. Lots of F-bombs being dropped, lots of titties, and unaliving people. It makes Eminem sound like the innocent Black Eyed Peas, which, Jesus Christ, their music is just terrible. For the rap scene at the time, this was one of the most disturbing yet interesting albums to be released. Carnival of Carnage starts their cultish career on a high note, and really does not hold back with its not holding back lyrics. Wow, did I really just write that on my script? Not holding back with not holding back? I mean, Jesus, I need to make better scripts, but I guess I digress. They would go on to ramp everything up with their second concept album, The Ringmaster. It did everything even more intensely, especially the vulgarity, the F-bombs, and everything else in between. It was the subsequent card representing a bittersweet opposing monster. Depending on how you lived in your life, you could face a ringmaster who was either small and feeble, or big or large and timid if you lived a terrible life. This aggressive album infatuated a large portion of the Detroit area, making them huge in local clubs, but this was tame compared to their inevitable controversy in 1997 with Disney of all people. ICP aren't exactly for the faint of heart, nor the most child-friendly, but I guess Disney begged to differ since they were signed to them. They were signed to them in 1997, and I guess we're truly living in an Ohio universe. I mean, this is the most Ohio thing ever. If ICP created a Disney album, the Disney characters would probably piss themselves out of fear and just hide somewhere. I could definitely see them making a Cartoon Network album, though. I mean, could you tell me this artwork does not fit a show like Courage the Cowardly Dog? But enough sick jokes. They somehow managed this by their manager paying $1 million whopping dollars to Disney's Hollywood record label to be signed to them. But unfortunately, Disney pulled the plug the day this album was set to be released, and they were already expecting 100,000 albums to be shipped to the public. Talk about an embarrassment. I bet they finally paid attention to the lyrics by then, which involved an abundance of just gangbanging. They soon became one of the most infamous and hated duos on the planet, but for misunderstanding reasons, this clouded their reputation for decades, with most perceiving them as just a gimmick and a joke, but people, I guess, just didn't get the memo. Their music had provocative language, but for good reason. Despite this peculiar scenario, this ended up making them huge, despite the controversies, especially since the album that they released under Disney was great, The Great Lmk. This album was very ironic to their situation, since this in fact represented a card named the Necromancer who manipulates others towards greed. Disney arguably was the Great Lmk during this time. This was a brilliant marketing strategy when it came to ICP's perspective. The rest of the albums followed this with other cards such as The Amazing Jekyll Brothers, The Wraith, Shangri-La, to the Great Lmk, The Riddle Box, that has another concept to it. But by the time the 21st century hit and started to progress, the hatred towards them was on par with Nickelback and Limp Bizkit, but arguably undeserved hate, unlike the other two. Many hated them due to not understanding their rap style and their intelligent lyrical content. In some ways, they were the underdog rap duo who were accepting to everyone. I mean, they even have charities towards the poor, so they really have kind hearts, which is why they have such a huge following. As of 2023, they still receive 1.7 million listeners on Spotify and an avid fan base that will just continue to support them for ages to come for the long run. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.